Auction house marketing. Let's go through what's useful and what's kind of table stakes. So I'm going to start with table stakes. And again, this is all my opinion. Don't have to agree with me. So the first is lot essays. The reality is that lot essays today and lot descriptions, most auction houses are correctly working with AI to help optimize their historic catalog of essays, as well as use information and material that's out in the broader audience to help optimize those essays so that they can best attract buyers, work with paid search and SEO. So while that promise is nice, the reality is that chances are the auction was already going to do that. And that's not a very heavy lift for them to put that into place. Not that you need every promise to be a heavy lift. Now, the other one, and this is for something I've also just agreed with for a long time, is printed material. And so catalogs, marketing mailers. If the goal is to attract a high net worth individual to bid on your item, just name me one high net worth individual that actually knows exactly where they're going to be, has one home and location to be at, whereby this can be perfectly timed that the auction house somehow miraculously gives them this printed material exactly when they need it to the exact location they're going to be. To me, just always seemed like a really low probability. However, if you are selling something that's a more classic item, let's take vintage sports memorabilia as an example, whereby a buyer subset is an older age demographic that tends to skew more towards printed material, then certainly that is a reason to have a catalog. But the auction house already knows that and is already printing that catalog anyway, where again, similar to honestly the item description, it's not really the most exciting promise, just because they would probably have done it anyway. Now, the two I really like. First off, this one's just a tried and true, and I'll explain why. Lot placement. Always ask for lot placement. Specifically, you want to be earlier in the sale. Now, two reasons for this. The first is, the reality is that people fatigue viewing things. So when the sale goes live and people are able to view the catalog or view the item pages, you want to be earlier on because you just have a higher probability of more people seeing your item before they fatigue and ultimately end up leaving the page and coming back later. So then the other part of this is, of course, when the bidding is happening, you again want to be earlier in the sale because the majority of the population that's bidding on the sale has not put all of their allocation of money that they've been thinking about spending on this sale into multiple items. If you're earlier, you just have a higher probability that there's a higher willingness to spend than if you were later in the sale. And then of course there is this third component, which hard to prove, but by being earlier in the sale, you tend to be closer to sort of press-worthy heavy hitter items. And thereby, even when press goes out, you tend to get more eyes, more visibility. I don't include that one as strongly just because it's really hard to prove conversion that some really famous item near yours somehow converted that bidder over to you. So the other one I really like, and this is one you should always ask about because it always gets forgotten, is international marketing. If you are selling an item that for any reason you have strong convictions loosely held that that item has an international market, always ask the auction house, how are you marketing towards the international audience? Now, let's take, for example, if you're selling something that is known to have buyers in APAC, then you want that auction house to commit to you something probably to do with WeChat or other channels that are going to enable them to communicate with those buyers. So what you always want to do is just ask about international, and if they say that that item does have an international audience, lean into what are you going to do to specifically target that audience. And it's an important one to ask about because keep in mind, a lot of these collecting markets skew anywhere from 60 to 70% US, whereby a lot of the campaigns that are being driven just invariably end up going towards US visibility. So you just always want to ask a follow-up question about international. So those are the four, two that are kind of nice to haves, and two you always want to ask about, which is a reminder, always go for the early lot placement, and then always be curious about international markets.